Thanks, Gregor. Hey, Paul. Um, Robin Leonard is frustrated that teams that are vaccinated can't get out a little more and be a little more normal. I guess the argument against that is competitive balance for teams that haven't had the vaccination. As a coach, which of those do you think should get a priority?
I think we're all members of a community where we all live, and the rules from the get-go have been different in each community. I know that in the NHL, prior to vaccination, we're all under kind of a certain safety net. I think that you should be respectful of the community that you're in and stay within those rules. I truly don't understand the disease well enough. Like how you get it, what your chances are after vaccinated. I know there's lots of stats. I don't know them. So I'm just kind of go by what everybody around you tells you you're supposed to do and say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So if the time comes, I mean, I don't know, a little while ago, I was at like 133,000 away from being vaccinated. I know I'm moving closer to get the chance. When I get the chance, that's going to happen. And then I'm still going to just follow along with what I'm doing because it's not been easy, but we're all in it. So just follow along with what everybody else around you is doing. And I'm not looking to go golfing.
We'll go next to Jason Bell from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Good morning, Paul. You coached for a long time and 8+ or parts of 8 seasons here, so you know your club. You know how to evaluate a club as far as personality, emotional, physical well-being. 45 games in to a season, or 10 games left in a season, I should say. But does 45 seem like a heavier 45 than usual because of all the stuff that's been going
on? I felt that way probably 5 days ago. When we looked at the schedule when it first came out, I thought from that March 7th, 8th 2-day block until the April 18th, 19th, prior to Vancouver shifting the schedule, we would go 7 weeks of the heaviest schedule that I'd ever seen. Somebody told me a stat that hasn't been since 1980 that a team played 17 of 22 on the road. And I think we felt that the positive was, what I didn't understand was how much better staying in the same town and playing more than one game would make it. It would make it survivable because you're not getting off the plane. We get off the plane at 2:00 every morning. And now we're not doing that because we're staying in one block. And that was the saving grace that I didn't anticipate. And so it made it survivable. It's been heavy. You look at what this Montreal schedule is like, what we had in that block, and Vegas is going through that now. Those are heavy schedules. We've been fortunate that we've stayed healthy. And a big part of that, I think, is not getting off the plane, not letting that sleep debt get too significant.
We'll go next to Steve Simmons from the Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Steve.
Good morning, Paul.
Morning.
You've coached teams in the past where you had to make goalie decisions. You're coaching one now where it's just that guy. What's it like to coach a team?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you have, Steve, a completely legitimate question, and I'm coaching 2 teams because whatever I say about having this is because I know the story, right? If you have a website, you're going to get the Toronto articles. So how can I do this without you being able to use it?
Talk about Weeksy and Archie. I don't know.
Yeah, Weeksy and Archie. I played Arthur 72 games one year, 72, and he was upset that I didn't play him in one game. The difference is you don't think about it coming to the rink as much in the morning. You when you get to know a guy like we've gotten to know Connor over the last 4 or 5 years, and you've seen him build and you start to understand him as a person, I don't spend much time thinking about it. If it gets to a stretch where I need to start thinking about it, you do more. You start looking at the schedule and trying to manage it and how can we get them back on track. But the advantage for me is time cost as the head coach. I don't have to spend much time worrying about it. Now you will, even a player like Connor, over the course of a year, there's going to be a stretch where you start to get concerned about workload and minutes and all those other things. But the benefit is that I could, at the start of the year, barring any injury, I can look at the schedule and kind of map out a plan right at the start because I have a very strong understanding of what he's like as a man, and that's the advantage for me.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, good morning, Paul. Saturday, we noticed a little bit more of a dedication towards the matchup between Lowry and McDavid. Did that present an issue as far as line rotation, or was the 6 penalties also a part of that? And
that was the way. It's a good question because I went back and looked hard at it, and because I didn't like the minutes that I got to through 2 periods. And there were a bunch of things. So one was Edmonton was slightly better than we were. So when you look at the 3 TV timeouts, and one of them came at the end of a McDavid shift, the timeout, that face-off's in our end, and it was on the left side. Lowry's going all day long. If that face-off was in the other end of the ice, I would have used a different line. I'm not so hard married to that match. And then, so I come out of it more heavily weighted than I want to be on the Lowry line. And you look at the end of the game, the one guy plays 27 minutes, the other guy's 25. So I'm not hard matching that. I'm not running Lowry's line that hard all night. But what you're hoping for in the flow of the game is, so you'll see it the same concept against Tavares tonight. You're hoping for enough offensive zone shifts that the TV's timeouts come at a certain time that you can blend those minutes. So I got into the sort of latter part of that first period, and I know it, I don't love it. And then we take the 3 penalties and we end up killing almost all of them. So there's a 6-minute block now where I'm running Lowry's line more than I wanted to, but we're still fairly close in that game. So it's a 1-0 game on the power play goal. I don't want to get away from it. And when I did in the third, it was in the back of the net, right? So it's not as hard a matchup as it would have looked like in the game. So much of that came from when the TV time came out, minutes on the shift, where the face-offs were, those kind of things.
We'll go next to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Thanks, Gregor. Morning, Paul. What's it like to be preparing for Game 8 of a season series and still getting to know new pieces on both sides?
Isn't that the truth? We were talking about that this morning. We're trying to anticipate what their lines are going to look like, what the game's going to look like, how much different it'll be. We got a new defenseman going in. I think there's always, that little adjustment around the trade deadline time, but you always feel you got enough runway at the other end and if you're adding pieces, you're probably in pretty good shape there. So you've got lots of runway. Now we got to get to know people and kind of relearn about teams, and we won't know, right? So you're not going to see the Toronto Maple Leafs very probably until if you're fortunate enough to get into the playoff round with them, when all Hyman comes back, Anderson comes back, then you get a look at the team. So that's why I'll say it now, and preservation of your club is always foremost for the coach. You won't weight the result of these games as too foretelling on what it would look like if we meet a month from now.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. A moment ago, Andrew Kopp said that during a unique season like this, everybody's mental health gets affected at some point, in some time, in some way. But he credited the culture of the team, and that was beyond just players, and he went into staff in terms of how people were looking out for each other. Do you guys have anything formal in that way? What's your role? What do you see from your perspective about how guys look out for each other this year?
So I think it's a bit more organic than that. I mean, we talked earlier in the year, if anybody felt that they needed some outside help, we'd be more than happy to provide that. I think what's happened here, and I'm going to gather that on most teams, they're having the exact same experience, because what's happened is it's basically only us. And we've had this we've been on the road together, and it's truly kind of only you. I find we check in on each other more. It's true, the coaches, the players, like there's more time for one-on-one, appropriately distanced, one-on-one conversations about how you're doing, about that idea. How are you doing with this? And it's not even almost checking, it's more sharing, how you eating dinner? How's this going? Like, what did you guys, what'd you do yesterday afternoon? So we've spent some time, and we spent time in the room talking about that on off days. We're coming in after, one of the overtime loss in Toronto between game 3 of game 5. And we just brought him in and basically kicked him out because it was sunny out. We thought we could go outside and get some sun. And that was the whole meeting was, how you doing? You guys doing all right? Like, this is tough. Let's admit that this isn't easy. Had been on the road, it felt like, for a long time. So there would be an awareness of each other more, because it seems like that's all that we have left right now is just each other.
We'll go next to Sarah Lesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Morning, Paul. Just wondering, when you said that because of the injuries, everything, especially with the Leafs right now, that you won't wait these two games as much in terms of what you might see if you were to meet up against them in the postseason, does that affect or impact how you approach your matchups tonight? Unlike if they had been healthy maybe and preparing more for a potential postseason and what you might have?
I don't know that, Sarah. I think what happens is you go into the game, every game that you go into, with an idea. And part of that idea is what they're going to look like when they're at their best and what you should look like at your best. So you'll get in with that matchup idea, and then in almost every game, something's not true that you thought would be true. That parody that's supposed to shut down your number one line is either struggling and their coach has seen it, so he switched it. So what you thought was going to happen changed fairly early in the game, or a line that you were most worried about, isn't going, but man, that third line's running rampant on you. You're going to have to make a change. So you go in with an idea. You've got to try to assess your team and their team at the same time, where there's an advantage. A lot of times if things are even, if you're pretty comfortable with the way, you don't make an awful lot of changes. But we've been fairly healthy, so I can't say this has been driven by injury. We have not been a team that's heavily matched this year as I would have 2 years ago or 3 years ago, because at that time I had a bunch of 18, 19, and 20-year-old forwards that I was trying to hide at times. I was trying to find a place for them to play against that they could do their magic and score goals, but we wouldn't have to give any up. Now I don't. I mean, I'll run Thompson's line in the D zone against Matthews tonight if it's on the left side, and that's the right thing, and I won't think twice about it.
We'll go next to Michael Tracos from Post Media. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Paul. I don't know if you saw the Edmonton-Montreal game last night, but to me, it was the closest thing to playoff hockey I've seen all year.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you got less than a dozen games remaining now. Have you noticed the change in the intensity in a weird season where you're playing literally the same teams over and over again?
I think you're going to see it. It might be the weekend turn, right? So you've got three teams that are in that, and I'll put Montreal in it because they're sitting in the 4-hole, even though they've got the gap, that are in that playoff either retention or they're trying to claw back in it. So it's full on all out. And now you've got this kind of unusual tightening of the top three teams, and Montreal could eventually get, but realistically, the top three that are fighting for that first position, right? So that game's still there. So I think it ramps up hard here tonight and it keeps going. What's been, and I agree with you, that game last night, you're going, oh my God, it's the end of May. These guys are going after it. But with Van being out, I've had more games, more evenings where I've been able to watch non-North Division, non-Canadian Division games. So I watched the Boston-Washington game the other day, and it was full on. And I'm watching that thinking, oh yeah, I remember what the Central Division used to look like. So I felt our North Division looked more like the East. And I think you're going to find it start to move more to what the Central Division looks like as we get closer to the end of the season.
And final question to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Morning, Paul. Thanks, Greg. Just going back to kind of the mental health thing. Do you think the outside world has kind of understood what teams, and I guess specifically players and coaches, have kind of gone through this season? I know sometimes the sentiment is, oh, these guys are millionaires,
right,
cares about them, right? Like, I mean, they're rich. But do you think that people kind of understand what players have gone through this year and coaches?
No, but I'm not looking for any sympathy with that. I think none of us understood what this was going to be like, and what's truly different for us. It's the same thing that's different for everybody else. So we all go through it like you do. I mean, the hotels we stay in are brilliant. The food's fantastic. The travel is easy. So there's no complaint about that, but there's no fans in our building. And that's what makes the game fun, and that's gone. And there's no easy connections with family and friends. The same thing that all of you go through. We still, just because they're high paid players, we're all going through that isolation together. So I wouldn't say you guys don't understand. I would say you understand completely what we're going through. And maybe the statement is, it's not that we're not going through that because we work in the NHL. We're going through exactly in that isolation idea, the same as everybody else is. So that's difficult. What's not difficult is we all have jobs. We can get medical care if we need it because we have doctors around our team. So, you know, we can pay our bills. So that we don't have those same kind of worries that other people do. And that's real. What we are all sharing is I actually miss you guys. So that tells you how serious this is.